Hello everybody and welcome back into Jacket Sports Weekly. I'm Ethan Spazarski. Today we got our unusual setup of slate to talk about some Waynesburg sports. We got track and field, we got wrestling, and then we got our men's and women's basketball teams. Don't go anywhere. We got some great stuff for you here, right here on JSW.
Welcome to JSW, WCTV's home for Waynesburg sports. Watch our analysts discuss fall, winter, and spring sports and cover topics such as athletes of the week, phenomenal plays, and intense games on a weekly basis. Tune in every Tuesday to hear what's going on with your favorite sports at Waynesburg University here on Jacket Sports Weekly.
Where else would you want to be on?
Where else would you rather be?
Hello everyone, welcome back into JSW. Right now, we're going to stop. We're going to go inside, going to stand on the mats as we're going to talk some men's and women's wrestling with our analyst, none other than Mr. Mo Kiger. Mo, what's up, dude?
Not much. How are you doing?
You know what? I'm pretty chill. How are you?
Pretty good.
Pretty good?
Pretty good.
You excited to talk about some wrestling?
As excited as I can be.
All right, my man, let's get right into it. So, starting off with the men's wrestling side of things, a very busy week for them. Started out with Senior Day at Teal, move on to W&J the next day, and then you got your meet up there in New York. I mean, their Hunter Tri meet, in New York as well. So, talk to me about that. What were some of the notes? What were some of the highlights from those three matches in that week?
So yeah, this kid's been a huge talk for the majority of the season. Jesse Orban, he was Waynesburg's only win when they went up to W&J, and won by a major decision of 9-1, which he's been doing that all year long. And to me, he's the best wrestler at his weight class. He's also undefeated in dual meets, going 18-0 this season. There's only been two other people that have done that, and that's Colby Morris. He's done that the past 2 years that he's been here, and former All-American Wrestling and National Champion Jake Evans. So I think that he's on a pretty good road to win the PAC and move forward on to next year, right where he left off this year.
Now, I'm glad you mentioned both Colby Morris and Jake Evans. That brings me into my next point. What is next for Jesse Orban? What do you expect him to see going into this next match, and possibly what could happen after PAC championship and going into next year?
Yeah, going into this next match, he's really a top dog. Like, you can't call him an underdog now. Like, he's one of the best wrestlers in D3 collegiate level wrestling. So I'm expecting him to get a win this next match. And going into the PACs, I'm expecting him to have really good days there, expecting him to make it to the championship. And I get that injuries might happen, but he can fight through injuries. I know that. And he's a really, really tough wrestler, and he's going to do very well these next 2 weeks heading into the PAC tournament.
So I alluded to the busy schedule as well earlier, and something else, we're noticing, Jerron Polk, for example, got his first collegiate pin at Saturday in New York at the 285-pound weight class as well. Some other guys that have been popping up that have been kind of striving or getting a little better. You see with JT Hollyfield, AJ Tomeno. What's right now been some of the bigger highlights, maybe some of the other wrestlers on the team right now?
You said it, Jerron Polk, he got his first collegiate pin. That is huge, especially where he's at. Actually, he's just going to gain from that. And for the other wrestlers, we have AJ Tomeno. Yeah, he's up there. He won by fall in 2 minutes and 33 seconds. I don't think he's done that in this whole entire season. So he has a long road ahead of him coming into these next couple years at Waynesburg Wrestling if he decides to stick with it, which I hope he does because he has a lot of talent for this team and Coach McKinney.
So next match, Saturday at John Suma Invitational in Ohio. What does Waynesburg have to do to snap this 5-match losing streak?
They have to get more wrestlers in. Last tri-match, they only were at 5 weight classes. They gave up 5 forfeits, which is not good in a wrestling match at all, or in a tournament, because that's less people for you, that's less team points, that's just less points on the board, and it's not saying like a really good thing for Waynesburg wrestling right now when you're giving up forfeit after forfeit after forfeit. You need to find a way to bring people in so you could build a program and have a full lineup.
So just continuing on to that, I mean, at Baldwin Wallace here in a little bit of time, about 2 weeks, but as well, there's even more of a time. So how do you handle the break, not only from now to your next match or your next meet, and then do it again a week later, having a whole week off again, heading into PAX?
Yeah, I mean, rest is a really big thing, especially for wrestling. I mean, you have wear and tear on your body, so I would say rest for a couple days, and then ease into practice, and then you would get a lot harder practices as it gets closer, so you can get into shape and be ready and be at your best top level of performance going into this next match, and then have to do it again the following week for the PAC tournament, because that's where it actually matters, is amazing. And all these wrestlers are capable of doing it, and they just need to take the time to rest properly and practice the way that they need to get into shape.
So, I mean, I just have to say, going ahead with the PAC championship being held here at Waynesburg, I'm excited to watch it. We have Colby Morris, we have Seth Evans. It's going to be a fun and exciting thing, but I want to also talk about the women's side. What is feasible for the women to accomplish by the end of the year? They have 2 more matches, the 9th and the 22nd coming up. What do you see as possible?
I mean, Farron DeWitt, we saw her this past week. She took 5th place. So I'm expecting these women wrestlers to really excel in these next 2 matches so they could get better, and hopefully going into next year, they have a feel for what collegiate wrestling is like, and they can just build off that, and hopefully they can get more people on the team so that way they can have a much smoother practice and people can get work in the way that they need to. Because I know going in, you're not, if you're at 110 pounds and you have to wrestle someone like 30 more pounds than you, that's not really benefiting you. Then that's not really benefiting the other person. So you just need to get a smaller weight class going and a bigger weight class going so they could just have a really nice practice and get the feel for how their weight class is going to be like.
So you kind of alluded to it before, and I'll just kind of dig onto it here with my last question for you, Mo, on the women's side of things for wrestling. I mean, this year, the inaugural year, overall, can you admit, this has been a pretty good year? I mean, not for wrestling especially, it's more of an individual sport rather than a team sport. You're not going to win every match. Kind of like with the men's side, you don't fill every weight class, especially when women's wrestling is more of a new sport into the NCAA side of things. It's not a very well-known sport yet, and it's definitely progressing in that direction. So overall, would you deem this season overall success? And if you have anybody who specifically stands out in that category who led to that being true, who will those people be?
Yeah, this has been a great season for women's wrestling. I do think that it is really good from the Waynesburg athletic department as a whole to get this going. And yeah, I've been saying it all year. Farron DeWitt, she's been up there. She got the first collegiate win for women's wrestling for Waynesburg, and I'm expecting her to just keep moving forward, as I said before, just so she can get better. And they just need to be a team. There's not much I can really say other than that.
Well, Mo, thank you again for always sitting down with us. But don't you go anywhere, as we'll be sitting down with Vinny Heller here to talk about track and field on JSW. Welcome back to JSW, and today we're sitting down with Vinny Heller to talk about track and field. Vinny, how are you doing?
I'm doing great on this cold Afternoon.
Hey, it's 33 degrees, man.
It's-
Get the
yeah,
shorts
yeah,
It's a
on.
lot
Are you kidding
better.
me?
All right, it's a
Oh
lot
my
better.
goodness.
Still cold.
So anyway, let's get things started. How about you bring things back and talk about what happened over the weekend with this track and field team?
Although the men's placed 10th out of 15, their performers stood out. Jacob Harker broke the school record and has his own record now at 1460 in the shot put. Broke Waynesburg's program record of 1446. Quentin Reaver also broke a team record. He ran an 8:58 3K. He's the first yellow jacket to run a sub-9 3K. Ella Rochelle, still consistent. She always will be, I feel, and I think that'll help towards the rest of the season. Maggie Claire did good for how young she is, as I said in the last episode. I feel like that was pretty expected.
So right now, I mean, especially for Jacob Harker, you break a 15-plus year record, which, as shown, doesn't happen for every day. It's a 15-year record for a reason. How do you build off of that, where you already set the tone up here for him, or maybe some throwers especially? How do you build off of that when you already set the bar so high? And maybe as well on the other side of it, how do you build off of maybe the finishing 10th and 11th of 15 teams there for the running wise as well?
I definitely feel like you got to be rolling high, setting that tone, and even the throwers below him that place below him, same team, they should be looking to go into this meet, and especially this week of practice, and get back to work, knowing that 10th out of 15 isn't what they wanted, but they're working towards it and they're progressing every week on week. Same with the women's team. But I definitely think they have to get back to work and be clear-minded and put that record to the side now, because you have to get back to work.
Now that set things up perfectly for what I wanted to ask. With now a quick turnaround, it's over. Their next match is going to be February 1st. What is the mindset and atmosphere like with multiple players or members of the track and field breaking records, setting new boundaries? What's possible now? What is going to be their next goal and next area to improve on for this invitational at Youngstown State University mid-invitational?
I would say one word to keep in mind would be consistency. Like I said, Ella Rochelle has been really consistent, but staying consistent in their respected events, as the older ones on the team need to set that example to where they shouldn't be coming any lower than they are. They need to keep staying where they're at, put each last race in the back of their mind and just keep going, because when you set up and you say by example, those younger kids work behind you and they start placing higher and higher. And what you need to win more events and more meets is high finishers, and I think that'll help a lot.
Is there a way you could stay a little bit more consistent, maybe as an athlete, whether it's maybe a training regimen, maybe it's you know what you do when you're not in practice? Is there a certain way that you think maybe, all right, consistently we can do this and this and set up this routine to help build up or maybe get better as we go later in the year?
As the numbers are showing, what they're doing in practice is working. But like I said before, you got to keep recovery as you get later into the season. This is now it's their third meet, but they've done practice before. But going towards this next meet at YSW, you have to be healthy, and even more healthy than the last meet, because as you have more distance runners coming in now that the season's actually started, the indoor season has actually started, you need to be healthy and recover-wise. Otherwise, I think what they've been doing in practice, like I said, the numbers are showing and proving it. I think it'll come on his own as they keep doing what they're doing.
Now, Quint Weaver, he broke his own record as well, becoming the first jacket to run a sub-9 minute 3K. What's the thing that the long distance runners have to do to just make sure they're staying pace and they have to consistently do well, not trying to outpace themselves, trying to make sure they stay consistent as well?
Definitely take practice like it's a race. I mean, those long races I couldn't do it myself. I know probably most of us up on this desk could not do it. But you have to stay consistent in working out, doing your same thing, your work regimen, running, staying consistent and healthy, drinking your water and hydrating. Those races are pretty long, whether it's Quentin Weaver running the 800 or, like I said, the sub-9 3K. It's a lot of distance in one day, and you definitely need to stay healthy and keen on your body to be able to do that.
As a team, as a former athlete, as a former athlete yourself in high school as well, with not a multi-sport athlete, when you see some of your teammates have these accolades and continuously better, so Quentin Weaver, him breaking records is just kind of a thing he does now. It's like in karate, breaking boards. He does it so well. How do you, as a mindset of an athlete, be able to stay composed maybe sometimes when you're like, oh, I'm just 1 second off my own PR, I'm so close, but you're just not there. How do you as an athlete have a mindset where you can go, okay, I still can compete, I still can do this, even though a lot of people around me are succeeding, and I still want the best for me, you know?
I feel like that is a complete team thing. Everybody has to be able to feed off each other's energy, and as the older guy, you have to be able to know when not to be, per se, cocky about it and try and brag about it, whereas you have to build those younger guys up who maybe it's their first season running, even running track, and they just wanted to try it out and throw. They did it in high school. You definitely have to keep your composure and stay humble. But I definitely feel like with all these teammates breaking accolades, it sets that example for the younger kids to work towards that in practice. They see what the people who are succeeding are doing, and they're doing it pretty well. Just follow them same footsteps, and they'll.
All right. Vinny, thank you so much for coming on and talking some track and field with us.
Thank you, guys.
As we'll get ready to continue on with the track and field season. But we're going to stop. We're going to stay inside, but head over to the hardwoods as Joe Shirillo is going to come up to the desk. We're going to talk some women's basketball here on Jacket Sports Weekly. Hello, everyone. Welcome back into the studio. Now we're getting back to the hardwoods. Talk some women's basketball with none other than Mr. Women's Basketball Analyst himself, Joe Shirillo. What's up, Joe?
Nothing much.
Great weather we're having, huh?
Yeah, it's great weather.
It's
I don't know
cold.
why we're asking about the weather.
It's great. It's
We're
indoor
talking
weather.
about an indoor sport.
Oh, exactly. It's great indoor weather. So, getting on to what we're here to talk about first. Women's basketball team beat Geneva. They got back. They went even, got the retribution they needed from earlier in the year from the loss, 64-60 loss. How'd they do it? How do you beat Geneva the first time? How do you get back into the win column?
They were able to stay on their pacing that they've been able to do in those first games coming back from winter break. I've talked about it many times on here, in pre-games, on air, all of it all together. Mainly, it's their pacing. Against Grove City and Teal, they were doing some great pacing overall. They lost that when they played against Bethany, in which Bethany has a little bit of a faster offense, and they also have their full court press. When you go against Geneva, having Emily Garvin, who has continued to just press a new wave into not only Geneva athletics, but the conference athletics as well. Waynesburg was able to eliminate her from most of the contest. She wasn't as much of a factor as we would think, and then they were able to just continue to go. Callista Friday having 20 total points, 8 rebounds, 3 steals overall, and Moorbacher having 14 points, going 12 from 18 from the free throw line. That definitely helped in their win against Geneva.
Now, as you mentioned, multiple players with 12-plus points on Saturday. Do you think we're looking at a very consistent 4 quarters for this women's team? Do you think we're going to see that again going into Chatham's game?
Unfortunately, no. It's not something that you normally typically see from any basketball team in any scenario. There's going to be a quarter that's not going to be the best of theirs, and that's okay. That's how the game goes. Normally, for this women's team, it's that third quarter that we've been seeing from last year moving over to this year. It looked better coming into the beginning of the year, but now it's started to fall off a little bit, but they've been getting back to it. So far, I think their best quarter has been their first, and they've been able to come out strong very well, continue that into the second half. Maybe not as strong, but they continue that. But then going into the third and fourth quarter, they struggle a little bit, but they come back and they're able to find a way to get those wins, especially against Geneva.
So for Waynesburg, the last 2 years before this year, only a total of 8 wins. This year, they've gotten quite the conglomerate amount of wins with 10. Really, how does that happen? How do you transition? How was that able to, just happen overall with pretty much the same team for almost all 3 of those years?
For all 3 of those years, it really came down to who was the difference makers. And a lot of that was the young talent that we're seeing in here. For Sam Jones, definitely when you were recruiting, you were enthusiastic about a lot of the different players that you were able to get on this roster. Just some to name. Mia Hankins, Karen McFadden, Jules Moore-Bacher, and Calissa Friday. They've all made differences. They've either started or they've been the first people right off the bench. They're either making threes, making those free throws, or being able to hold the ball and consistently have control of the game overall. And that's what's really helped this team transition from having 10 wins this season compared to their 8 total wins over the past 2 years. So for this team, it's mainly just come down to they're continuing to find their youth. They're finding their different players that are not only better than their previous rosters, but also they continue to get better. We've also seen juniors like Tori Wozolowski been able to get more time and then be able to be more of a difference maker as well. Not only do you also have senior Maddie Dayton, who's been able to come in off the bench, do some great rebounding, great defense, so that way the offense can get the ball and put the points up. But it's just become more of a team. There's not really any individual athletes on this team. Mia Hankins could come in, have a fire game with 3-pointers, and then be kind of cold on her next game. And then McFadden can do the same thing. But it's all inconsistent at sometimes, which is perfectly okay because a lot of these teams and a lot of these players can get on fire or get cold, and the other ones can pick up the pace where they need to.
Now, Waynesburg, the last time they played Chatham, they lost 71-54. What did Waynesburg can take away from that loss, bring it into this game on Wednesday, and come back and look for a win here?
Well, against Chatham, they really did start off very hot, and it was a good thing that they did that. But then they went into the locker room, they came out of the third quarter, and it didn't look great, and that's where this loss did come from, was that third quarter. And again, it's one of those things that we keep pressing, we keep harping on, is that they just need to get better at it. And they have. They've been continuing to get better at that. Chatham having the best offense and the best defense within the President's Athletic Conference is definitely a daunting task to take on in this game. I would love to see a win come out, but honestly, if I'm being realistic, it's better if they just continue to compete, continue to contend, so that way they can hopefully look for other wins within Westminster, Franciscan, Teal, games that they're going to be playing later on, and looking for a playoff opportunity.
If you were to deem or try to come up with a solution right now, what would that be? So you alluded to the third quarter struggles, that earlier in the year, the third quarter was that period of time where the team wasn't at its best. And then you also alluded to, just maybe this is an overall one of the best teams in the PAC that defeated W&J women's basketball twice this year. Fantastic fashion, one of the best teams up there as well. If you had to deem away from maybe what Waynesburg had to do to get into the win column, to find their way into that, what would that be?
They're pacing. I've harped on it a lot over not only Jacket Sports Weekly, but over multiple different areas, and you've heard me talk about it outside of the studio, is that they continue to find, when they find their pacing in that second quarter, they put it into action in the third and fourth quarter, and it just continues to make them well. If they're continuing to just run up and down the court, they're getting a little too busy, there's a little too much going on, then that's when they're getting gassed, they're not having a lot of stamina left, and then that's where their bench players come in. Some of those bench players aren't as good, and then that's where the inconsistency comes. They're not playing with people that they've practiced with, stuff like that. It does come up with that. So it's really just, are you taking your time? Are you going fast? What's going on in the game? And how are you going to just go after it all together? What's going to happen?
So Waynesburg is just a few wins out of a possible playoff window here. If you're Sam Jones, what do you look here? Do you look to possibly push forward and try to get into the playoffs and see what happens? Or do you just want to keep being positive and trying to see what kind of combination works to work better for next year?
If I'm Sam Jones, I'm definitely thinking that the last time that I was at the playoffs was in 2018, when my last winning season was. Right now, they're sitting at a winning season so far, which is a great thing, and I definitely think they could contend with that and continue to get back into that winning column. If I'm Coach Jones, I definitely want to take each game as its own. I'm not going to prepare myself for playoffs quite yet, because there is an opportunity that doesn't arise, that playoffs don't happen for you. There are very good teams within the women's side of the conference. So Jones just needs to go in, take every game by game, realize that certain games are going to be unwinnable and that certain games are going to be winnable. And that's how you got to just attack every day and every practice that they're going to go for from here on out.
Joe, thank you for sitting down with us. But don't go anywhere. Up next, we have Benicio DeFalco to sit down with us to talk about men's hoops here on JSW.
Unable to watch the live stream? Follow our account on X for live updates on the game. Check us out on Instagram as well for game day posts with all the information you need to know as well as behind the scenes of each production. Our social media team works the hardest to give the best content to all of our audience. We're even on TikTok. You can stay up to date with WCTV on our Instagram account with clips from each of our shows. And last but not least, subscribe to our WCTV YouTube channel to watch those shows in full length. Check us out from Lewiston, WCTV, and the entire Department of Comm.
Welcome back to JSW. To my left, I have Benicio DeFalco to talk to us about men's basketball. Benny, let's get right into things. What does this men's basketball offense need to do to get better?
So they're currently at the bottom, not the very bottom of the pack, but just not where you want to be. We talked about it. They're kind of just not getting things going offensively really at all. Their offense just consists of Anton Baker and PJ Suggs to this point in the season. And I just wrote down a couple of stats. 47% of the shots by Waynesburg in the win versus Bethany were shot by those two players. So if the teams are able to cancel those two guys out, we're going to need more players to come and step up. Casey Kazie's out, so I'm looking for guys like Rashad Hooper. He's been doing great jobs on the rebounding aspect all year round, but it's time for him to start scoring. Jalen Davis, I thought he'd be a name we'd start to see rise above, but he seems to be dealing with the injury right now. He's been on a minutes restriction almost all season long. So I'd say Rashad Hooper and Scott Bilvis, those two guys coming off the bench, making an impact. Even Jalen Goins, I'd like to see him just be a little more consistent because he's had games at times and he's shown that he can be a scorer in this offense. But then even Corey Mitchum, ever since the injuries have definitely started to speed up for this Waynesburg team, Corey's been asked to do a lot more on the offensive end, and he's been able to respond. He's another guy, if he can get a little more consistent, that I think the offensive numbers could definitely get better.
Something else I wanted to talk about, the blown leads, 17-point lead against Bethany in the second half 2 games ago. Bethany storms back to tie with 28 seconds left. Luckily, Waynesburg able to prevail in overtime, but for Geneva, not as much of a lead, more back and forth. Geneva actually held more of the lead in the first half, Waynesburg in the second half, but Geneva able to storm back, have some Ryan Durachik 2 deep floater, able to get that in there. What's Waynesburg got to do maybe to change that, to change their luck in the last 7 games of the year, including this upcoming game against Chatham?
Well, to be honest with you, I think it's going to be very hard because in order to not allow those streaks, you're going to need breaks and stuff like that. The past 2 games, Anton Baker, 73 minutes. Corey Mitchum, 74 minutes. PJ Suggs, 75 minutes. Jalen Goins, 78 minutes. Those guys are playing way too much time. Okay, yes, I know there's people dealing with injuries, but Anton Baker, PJ Suggs, you guys want to go on a playoff run and you want to be in the playoffs, you can't leave it all out on the regular season. And if you look at it, Tim Fusina, he went out and he brought in a bunch of transfers. We haven't seen everyone play yet. I think just using different guys at the right amount of times, like you said, they're up 17 points versus Bethany. And that was literally at the end of the game. And Bethany was able to come back and force overtime. So just little streaks like that. Like, I get it. I guess versus Bethany, you almost need those guys at the end of the game. But I would just say using substitutions at the right times, maybe when you're up a little bit and you're able to just get a couple points from those guys you don't always see. But even at that, Waynesburg's losing a lot of these players next season. So getting those young guys the experience and seeing what they bring to value for next season and seasons to come.
Now we have a small victory, a little bit of positives on the note. Last game, Corey Mitchum had a new season high, 17 points and everything. These small things can matter when it comes into going into the next game, especially against Chatham. If you're Tim Fusina, what are you looking for, and what is your best lookout for this game?
So if I'm looking versus Chatham, I mean, you're looking at their last matchup. You only lost this team by 4. You know you're capable of beating them. The only problem is Chatham's riding hot right now, 7 straight wins. It's going to be tough to beat a team like that, but it's going to come down to PJ Suggs and Anton Baker. You know those guys are going to score. It's going to be how much are you going to get out of those guys? Are you going to get a 10-point performance from Anton Baker, or are you going to get a 25-point performance? You're going to need those guys to step up, but then like I said, you're going to need the Jalen Goins. He's been a consistent starter all year round. If you can get 10 to 15 points from him, I think Waynesburg can do pretty good things.
So you alluded to it before, and we'll continue to pass on to it now. Upcoming now, Chatham, third best offense, fourth best defense in the PCA on the men's side of things for basketball. When Waynesburg traveled to Chatham and Pittsburgh, PA, all those months ago, not too many months ago.
Many moons ago, Buffalo roamed the world.
Exactly. It was a very back and forth game at the time. Both teams kind of getting their feet wet, kind of trying to find some stability. Now it's a little bit different here. Chatham has a 7-game winning streak. Waynesburg has been win-loss, back and forth all year. What else does Waynesburg have to do right now to better themselves or give themselves a better chance to win? Anton Baker, to note, in the last time they played, missed 2 free throws late in the game that were able to maybe help Waynesburg extend their lead. Weren't able to do that. Chatham comes back and wins off another blown lead. What's Waynesburg got to do now to forget what's happening right now and learn from their past?
I would exactly what you said. Stay disciplined. Free throws matter at the end of the day. Just talking about it, the crucial free throw, you guys need to hit those. Even like at that, Jalen Davis has had one of the craziest dunks of his career, missed the free throw right after, which would have ended up helping later down the line versus Geneva. Just little things like that, staying disciplined. And then the defensive end, this is a roster that was completely made up by their defensive talents. I'd like to see them step up that way because, I mean, you look at Waynesburg's roster, the whole time Tim Fusina's been here has been built off defense. We haven't seen much of that from this season, and it kind of just stinks just with what we've been sitting at. A lot of these guys are using, I mentioned the amount of minutes these guys are playing, so it's hard to get the effort on both ends, but somebody's going to have to choose. Somebody's going to have to be willing. It was Corey Mitchum back then that we see, diving out for boards. He's one of the smaller guys, and we always saw his effort on the court. We've been seeing him start using that on the offensive end. Which one of these guys are going to step up and do the dirty work for this team?
Now, you mentioned this is going to be a really tough game going against Chatham. Do you think it would be a good idea to just give your starters a day off? Corey Mitchum, PJ Suggs, Anton Baker. Give those guys a day off and just put in the transfers. Just put them out there, see what they do, and see what happens.
I think you have to play your guys just at this point in the season. Waynesburg really can't afford to lose these games, and especially if Waynesburg were to go out and lose by Chatham by 15, 20 points, that's huge for confidence because this team is already lacking confidence as is. They're dealing with injury. The guys are, it doesn't seem like everyone's really playing as a whole right now. So I don't think any of that would help, especially in like a 15, 20 point loss to Chatham, just with how skilled they are offensively. Not saying that you start those transfers, that's the outcome you're going to get, but you just have a better shot with the guys you've seen all season.
Thank you so much, Benny, for coming on today. And thank you to our other analysts who came on, Mo Kiger, Vinny Heller, Joe Shirillo as well. Thank you all for tuning in for this week's episode. For myself, Ethan Spazarski, my partner, Danny Flynn, and our amazing producers, Tyler and me, Hankin, we say so long. We'll see you guys next week for more Jacket Sports.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.